Welcome to another exciting edition of the Next Level TV program, and this is your regular host Oscar Bimpong in the driving seat, taking you to your destination of success. Let me tell you, there's a lot of negativities out there. There are so much negative report, so much negativity in our world today. But on the Next Level TV program, this is where you find inspiration. This is where you find the positives of life. This is where we give you the guidelines and the tools that can help you to achieve your dreams in life. Today is no exception. We are here to discuss a pertinent topic. The question is, what are we going to discuss? We are going to discuss communication in project management and its effect on stakeholders. And who do I have in the hot seat to discuss this powerful topic? This person is a communication consultant. She's worked with BT, BP, Marks and Spencer, O2, Siemens, TFL, that is Travel for London, and she's worked with so many multinational companies across the globe. She, as I said, is a communication consultant, a mentor, and a trainer. Who is therefore in the hot seat? She is Joanne Sweeney. Please welcome to Zip TV, and you are on the Next Level TV program.
Oscar, thank you so much for having me. It's a delight to be here, to be able to talk to you about communicating projects, because so many people don't even realise it's necessary. And I'm delighted to be able to share with you and with your audience why it matters. So thank you for having me.
You are welcome. The point is, in our daily life, communication is part of our lives. In our normal conversations, at job, in trying to sell our businesses to people, it's all about communication. Why is communication so important?
Well, communication at its heart is relationships. It's a relationship between one person and another. If we didn't communicate with each other, we'd live in isolation. You know, we'd be individuals, individual islands, millions of us, and we'd have no connection with other people. If we don't communicate, other people don't know what we're thinking, they don't know what we're feeling, they don't know what we want, they won't know when we've misunderstood them. There'll be nothing, no relationship at all. So for me, relationship is another word for communication.
Wow. So you are linking relationship with communication.
Yes.
Because you can only build a good relationship when you have good communication.
Yeah. And the thing is, communication, I suppose it's twofold. We have to be able to explain to people what we mean, but we also have to ensure they understand us. If they don't understand us, if they think we mean something different, or they don't want to listen, or they've already got something in their own heads that they believe we should be saying, we've got big problems.
So it means that the receiver of the communication should be able to understand what you are saying so that they can make a sense out of it.
Yes. And I think with my clients, I'm all the time saying to them, put yourself in the shoes of your audience. Don't explain things, don't communicate from your own perspective. Do it from the other person's perspective. Because if you do that, then they will understand, they will like you, they'll pay attention, and when you ask them to do things, they'll do it willingly.
So in the same way, it's like, don't sell what you want, but sell what people want.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And
that's from a different angle.
Yeah. And you have to know them, don't you? You can't do that if you don't know them.
And knowing them is about the relationship you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is really powerful. Linking communication with relationship. But today, we are really going to talk about communication in project management.
Yes.
What is communication in project management?
Well, I suppose pretty much anybody who works in business has got involved in a project of some sort. It might be that they're a project manager and they work in a project team and all they do is projects, but most people in their ordinary jobs have some projects that they get involved in, and it just means something that's not part of their day-to-day job. So something that's a bit out of the ordinary, and generally that makes it more fun. And generally a project, you have to deliver something specific by a set time. And so that's a project. And then it's the question is, what is communications? And communications is telling other people about your project.
Wow. So in a nutshell, I want to break it down.
Yes.
For example, Tesco wants to go to Africa.
Yes.
It's a project management
Huge project.
It's
yes.
a huge project.
It's a huge project.
So you are talking about project management is getting people that will manage that project for it to be successful.
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about?
It is, and I mean that's a lovely example, because if you think of Tesco going to Africa, they've got all the issues. I mean, you think about who do they have to win over? They have to win over their own stakeholders here to persuade them that they should be investing. They've got to persuade Africans that they should be buying from Tesco. And they've got to persuade their staff that it's a good thing for the staff as well.
Because I remember Vodafone was going to Ghana.
Yes.
And if you look at the huge investment, because from the company that they bought, if you look at the huge investment they put in terms of branding, in terms of technology, it means this is a very huge issue in terms of trying to undertake any project management.
Yes. And any Western company that goes into Africa, they can't come into Africa and do communications the way they do it in the West.
Yes.
They've got to do the communications in a way that works for the local cultures.
Exactly.
And if you go to Nigeria, the culture's different to the culture in South Africa.
Exactly.
So you've got to do it differently.
You got to do it differently.
Yeah.
And this is some of the things that I studied at school, because I did international marketing and international business.
Yeah.
So you need to, for example, take into consideration the culture of the people. If you don't take it in consideration, you are bound to really fail, because the way you communicate here is different from the way you communicate, for example, in Asia or in Africa. Yeah,
and a lot of it's not even the words. It's all about, it's things like body language. It's about showing respect.
Exactly.
And cultures, I mean, you definitely see it between the West and Africa, but even within African cultures, you know, African cultures don't necessarily get on with each other, because there's all this, you know, suppose I'm better than you, I'm inferior, and it changes, and you have to ignore all that and treat people as equals if you want to get on well with them.
Because, for example, in some parts of Africa, when you greet somebody good morning, you don't just pass, you need to shake their hands. But here, it's a fast-track world that people just say hi and they run, you know. So you need to keep all those things into consideration.
But you also have to ask them about their family first, don't you? Before
exactly,
you can talk business.
Because you can even talk business, you know. So all these things really, there are things that you really need to, because so it all comes under communication.
All of it, see, because it's all about relationships. Yeah, it is.
Communication is really huge.
It's an essential element of human relationships, but also business and projects.
Do we undermine it?
I think we, in our own personal lives, we understand how much it matters. Yeah. But even if you look at personal lives, you know, so many relationships go wrong. Yeah. Friends fall out with each other, marriages break down, you know, children don't talk to their parents, parents don't talk to their grandchildren, and it's all about miscommunications. Wow. And the same happens in business. Things go wrong, people misunderstand each other, they get insulted, they feel that they're not being treated properly. And when that happens, they stop being motivated to do their best, and they start doing the minimum required. And also, I mean, if you look at the way hierarchies work in business, and so I can probably talk most about Nigeria, but the way, you know, I understand that hierarchies in business work in Nigeria is very different to the way they work in Europe and in America, and that changes how motivated people are to do their best. Because
you've been doing a lot of communication consultancy in Nigeria.
I train Africans, so I haven't yet been to Nigeria. I'm looking forward to my first role in Nigeria. But I train Africans who come to the UK for 1 or 2 week courses. And I do PR, marketing, and internal employee communications training with them. And I love it. I love training them because I learn so much about how business works in different countries. Yeah.
That's really great. Who are the stakeholders in project management, especially in this sense here?
So for me, I see 4 key stakeholders. So the first one is the project team. So the people in the project team, and if we talk about the Tesco case, it's a huge project team across different regions and countries. There's also what we call the sponsor, and the sponsor is normally someone very senior in the company who said, I want this to happen, so I'm willing to give some of my budget to making this project happen, and I'm willing to release staff and other resources. So that's the sponsor, the person who says, this is what I want you to do.
That is the man of authority.
Yes, yes, yeah. Might be a woman.
Exactly.
So
that's
2.
I like to break things down.
Okay.
So for example, when you look at maybe Virgin, then we're talking about Richard Branson, who is giving that order that, listen.
It might not be that senior. It might be, because under Richard Branson, he's got a number of companies, and each company has a board of directors.
Yes.
And then below the board of directors, there'll also be senior people.
Yes.
So it might be one of those levels.
All right,
but it will be very senior.
All right then.
Someone with a big budget.
Yes.
So that's 2 of the audiences. The other 2 audiences are senior executives in the company, and then what we call end users, and they're the people whose jobs are going to be changed by the project.
Wow.
So people who are going to have to do their job differently.
Wow.
Yeah.
So now I've been doing this job for a long time. Now there's a new project coming up, and I need to move and do that project. That means I'm moving to a different arena of a job that probably is different from mine. Is it that difficult for people to really be able to do that?
Partly it depends how the project works. So some projects, the project team works full-time on the project, but often companies now have what they call virtual project teams, and that means people do their normal job, and they also have to find some extra time in their job to work on the project. So you do your normal job 80% of the time, and 20% of the time you work on the project, and probably the project manager is not your line manager. So that makes things complicated. But there are also, by end users, those are the people whose jobs are going to change. So they don't work on the project, but they're going to have to do their job differently. So if I give you an example, I've worked on something called CRM, which stands for Customer Relationship Management. Yes, and they're complex systems, and when a company introduces them, they're saying to their staff, you now have to put all the knowledge in your head about our customers into this database so other people can access it.
Yes.
And salespeople don't want to do that because it's their relationship with their customer that makes them valuable to the company. If they share that information, they say to themselves, the company no longer needs me, so they don't want to share it. So my role in being the communications lead for a CRM project is to identify who all the end users are, whose jobs are going to change, find out what they're worried about, what they're afraid of, and also find out what will make them support the project. And then communicate those things. So give them lots of information about how the system is going to help them do their jobs better, how it's going to make their life better. Whereas lots of people will come along and their communication will be, you must do as you are told. Do what you're told. There's no option, you will do what you're told. But people don't have to do what they're told. So they can say, what we say lip service, they can say, yes, we'll do what we're told, but they won't.
They won't, yeah.
Or they can say, not interested, go away.
Wow.
And both times, the project team can't do anything.
Wow.
Yeah?
So it's more about team building.
Yeah.
Yes, where everybody feels part of the team
Yeah.
and they contribute immensely to make the project works.
Yeah.
You didn't talk about the potential target market for that project. Are they part of the stakeholders?
Sometimes, yes. So sometimes customers will be, not all the time. One of my clients is a chemical manufacturing company that's got manufacturing plants and sales teams and project teams across Europe. And so when they talk about projects, they do talk about their customers. But not all projects have customers as a stakeholder.
I've heard about stakeholder engagement for
Yeah.
the acting time. What is stakeholder
Good.
engagement in project management?
It really means what we've been talking about, making sure that we pay attention to all our key stakeholders and that we build relationships with them and that we make sure they understand the project and they support us. So in communications, professional communicators, one of the models we use is called the communications escalator. And it's a series of steps that go up like that. It's got 5 steps and it says what we want to do is take our stakeholders from the bottom to the top. And each step they go up, we either make them aware of the project or we seek to change their attitudes, or we have what we call a call to action. We ask them to do something specific. And first of all, the idea is that we make them aware of the project. And then when they're aware, we make sure they understand what the project's all about, what it means for them, what it means for their customers, for their colleagues. And then we want to change their attitudes so they're positive and supportive. Then we want to get them involved so they're physically involved, because when you get people involved in anything, they're more supportive.
Exactly.
And then lastly, we want them to be committed so that they believe that this project is the best thing for them and for everybody they care about.
Because from what you were saying, in any project, there are some people within the project management team that would like to fight against the project because
Yes.
they don't like change.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
How can you make things work? Because this is normal. It happens is every project that happens. There are people within the team that don't like the idea. So in one way or the other, they would like to sabotage it.
I find when we're talking about change and transformation, there are very few people who resist for the sake of it. I mean, yes, there are some people who are always going to be awkward, but most of the time people who are resist for very valid reasons. So sometimes they do actually think what we're trying to do is not in the best interests of the company or customers. Other times it's because they don't understand, and sometimes it's because they've got they're passionate and they want to share their feelings and we're not listening. And so as soon as we listen, they change. As soon as we explain, they change.
But Anne, naturally as human beings, we are resistant to change, aren't we?
No, we're not.
Sure.
Absolutely sure. I would say a tiny, maybe 10, 20% of people resist change. People embrace change. That's my experience. That the bulk of people embrace change when they believe it's in their best interests and the best interests of the people they care about. And that's what communication does. Persuading them, it's good.
Because when you look at, I want to digress a little
Yeah.
bit, right? When you look at the world that we live in,
Yes.
there are so many troubles, there are so many, especially there are wars, there are fighting, there are so many things happening. This is all about people. When you go into the basis of all that is happening, it's about people fighting change.
I would say it's about people misunderstanding each other.
Okay.
So you've got two people and somebody in the middle is saying, we've got to do this, and they're saying, explain why, tell me why. Don't tell me what to do, don't tell me I have to do it, give me reasons why. Take me with you, persuade me that it is in our best interests. And if you persuade me, then I'm happy to go with you. But you've got to take me with you, not force me.
Why is communication important in project management?
There are stats. If you go online and Google, you will find stats that say something like 80% of projects fail. So they don't, in other words, they didn't deliver what they were asked to deliver on time and within budget. But more than that, it wasn't about time and budget. The reason the project was introduced was because the leaders of the company saw that the company needed to change in some way. And maybe they did deliver on time and on budget, but they didn't bring the change that was needed. And without that change, the company is going to fail in the short or the long term. So and so many companies fail. If you look at the FTSE 100 and the American New York Stock Exchange, you'll see the companies that were in the top 100 even 10 years ago are no longer there, and a lot of them no longer exist. They've been bought out because they haven't been managed well. They haven't kept up with the needs of the economy, the needs of society, technology, the needs of their customers. They haven't changed fast enough. And it's because they haven't taken people with them. But so I come back, I said 80% of projects fail. I don't know if that figure is true. I don't know that anybody's ever proved it. It's the figure, you know, that people quote. I personally believe that 80% of projects fail because they don't bother to communicate. Often the people who are involved in projects, who run projects, are very technical, and they come in and they deliver a technical solution without understanding what the leaders of the company really want. You know, they don't want a technical solution. Nobody wants a CRM system. What they want is better relationships with customers. And they see the CRM as the way of getting that. But they don't want the CRM per se. They want better relationships with customers.
Better relationship.
Yeah.
So it's like they are trying to use CRM in place of building personal relationship with customers.
Yeah.
And you think that doesn't really work?
I think the CRM system could work if the people who need to use it understood why it was being introduced.
Because when you look at Tesco, one of Tesco's successes is about CRM, managing CRM very well.
Yes.
And this is because they I think they introduced CRM first in the UK,
Yes.
and it is really moved them to be the high, you know, in terms of our grocery market.
Yes.
So CRM in one way or the other, but it all, as you are saying, it will only work well if the communication is solid.
Yeah. Shall I give you another example? I was involved in rolling out a purchase order system. I worked for, it was a company, a pharmaceutical company, and it had offices in 10 or 12 different European countries, and each of them worked individually. So, and each of them had, some of them had purchase order systems to manage the money that was spent by staff. Some of them didn't, and they wanted to introduce one pan-European purchase order system. And I was working with the person who was introducing it, and I can remember having a discussion with him, saying to him, you know, we're going to have to tell people why they should do this. We're going to have to convince them, because otherwise they won't use the system. And he said, oh no, we won't. We'll just tell them and they'll do it.
So when you talk about the people, are you talking about the stakeholders, or you're talking about the potential target market?
These are employees.
Employees, all right.
Because the way a purchase order system works, and maybe not everyone's familiar with them. With a purchase order system, when you want to spend money, it doesn't matter how much money, £5, £5,000, £5 million, you have to fill in a purchase order requisition that goes into the accounts department, and they allocate that against your budget, and then they sign it off and it goes to the supplier, and the supplier has to quote a number for that invoice to be paid.
Okay.
And that works very well. It's a way of controlling the money that's spent. In this particular company, senior people, there was no budget, so if someone wanted to organise an event, they could spend any amount of money they wanted, and the bills would be paid eventually.
Okay.
And they were trying to prevent, they were trying to make people accountable for the money they spent.
Wow.
But, if people don't use the system, you're still legally obliged to pay suppliers' invoices.
Yes.
It's.
So communication is very, very critical to the success of any company.
Yes.
I think Zip Multimedia is going to learn a lot from communication, because it's a very important tool that can really help every company to succeed. What are the best ways of communicating your projects?
The very best way of communicating is face-to-face. It's like having a conversation like we are, where you can see the person's body language, you can see their eyes, you can see their lips, you can see their intention, not just their words. So that's the very best, and that works. Face-to-face communication works brilliantly in any company that has less than 150 staff members. Once you've got more than that, the leader, the chief exec or the managing director or the minister can't do it. There's just too many people. So then you need to start communicating in print and using the intranet and the internet and CDs and video and audio and posters and all the other channels that there are.
Because these days traditional ways of doing things are fading out. And for example, as we were saying, face-to-face interaction with your employees and all that, now companies have got thousands of employees, and there's no way everybody can be, engaged in that aspect. So there are different levels in terms of internet and intranet, using emails and all that. Does it actually work?
I think it's not so much the channel itself, but how it's used. So if I give an example, one of the people I know, she is a head of internal communications in a pharmaceutical, not the one I mentioned, but a different one. And once a week, she interviews the chief exec. So they sit down like we are now, and she asks them questions that she's gathered from staff, and they record it and then they stream it over their intranet.
Okay.
And it's a way of, I mean, they've got thousands and thousands of staff members being able to ask the chief exec about things that really matter to them, and get a response without having to be there in person. And that's really popular with that particular company. It works really well. But it's about what works for your organisation and your culture and the needs of your staff. And I mean, that's an example of something that's done for the chief exec for the whole company. But a project team could do that as well.
Wow. Communication. That means there must be a strategy.
Absolutely, yes. Always a strategy, and always plans, and always implementation, and always monitoring to check that you actually did deliver on your objectives.
But the strategy depends on the company you are working for, or the cultures and all that.
Yes, it does. I mean, there is a structure for a communications strategy that you probably know, Oscar, because it's exactly the same as for marketing.
Yes.
You know, you start with a SWOT analysis, and then you set objectives, and then you decide the target audience, and then you do messages, and then timings.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is really, really effective, because as you are saying, every company needs to define their strategy in terms of communicating to their staff. The point is, communication to you, for example, is one way, but the way you will transfer the communication to another team or to a third party can be different.
Yeah.
Because I can ask you a question, you give me an answer, but that answer, if you yourself is given to another person, there can be discrepancy. How can you make sure that communication that is transferred to a third party can really send the exact message?
Yeah, so I suppose it's, the people listening to this, what are they hearing me say?
Exactly.
Yes. And the only way I can know that is if at the bottom of the YouTube video, they ask questions. So they say, Joanne, what did you mean by that? Or I don't agree with you. So if people do that, that would be fantastic, because then we can both respond.
Exactly.
But that's the answer, really. It's feedback. It's allowing people to feedback, to ask questions, to say, I didn't understand what you mean, or is this really what you mean? Did I hear that clearly? Please explain, or give some examples. Where can I find out more? So one of the things I would say, every week I send out an email called Transforming Tuesdays, and in it I have just one nugget of very practical sort of tips, tools, techniques that people can use in their jobs to improve communication and relationships. And it might be in projects, it might be in teams, it could be, a lot of it depends. I answer questions that people ask me. So if your audience would like to sign up for Transforming Tuesdays, they're very welcome to. You do need to sign up. You only get it if you sign up. But all I ask for is your name and email address. And just to go to commsabilities.com/ezine. I think ezine.-g.asp. But if you go to Commsabilities, you'll find it.
All right, then. That is really powerful, because communication is a two-way issue. But at the end of the day, what you have said today, somebody might like to talk to another friend about it, but he must misinterpret it. So it is very important you communicate clearly to the person that you want to communicate to, and then transferring it to another party, they get the right message.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's checking understanding, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So we are going to go for a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we are going to continue our discussion. I'm really loving it. I never knew communication is just one powerful tool that can really make you or break you. I have with me Anne Sweeney, who is a communication expert or consultant, and she knows all about communication in project management. Just stay tuned, and we will be right back. Welcome back to the Next Level TV program. And as usual, this is your regular host, Oscar Bimpong, in the driving seat, taking you to your destination of success. What a wonderful discussion that we are having here. And what are we talking about? We are talking about communication in project management and its effect on stakeholders. I know most of us are working in corporate institutions, and most of us have been involved in one project or the other. The point is, what were the challenges that we faced? Why didn't the project went well? Most of the problems boils down to not having effective communication. And who do I have on the hot seat to discuss this pertinent topic? She is no other person like Joan Ann Sweeney, who is a communication consultant, a mentor, and a trainer. Please welcome back to Zip TV, and you're on the next level once again.
Thank you very much, Oscar. I've really enjoyed our conversation so far.
Exactly. And you know, some of the tools that we provide on this show, I think people should pay for it because you are giving so much information. These are some of the things that people pay for huge sums of money in terms of training and seminars, but we are giving it out for free. How generous are we?
We are very generous, but I would say that if anybody's listening and thinking, I'd like to know more, then they should connect with us, and they can always find training courses, can't they?
Exactly.
To learn more.
Exactly. And that's what we are here for, to give people the tools to really build their dreams, to achieve their goals and their purpose in life. Because whatever you want to achieve in this world, you cannot live without communication. And this is what we are here to give you the tools for you to achieve that dream.
Yes.
Thank you again for being part of this show. Now back to business. Does effective communication makes any difference in successful project management?
Yes, absolutely essential. So you've both got to communicate and do it effectively. And I suppose the question is, what does effective mean?
Exactly.
Because one of the issues for people working on projects is that they're not communication specialists. Sometimes projects have communication specialists, other times they don't. That doesn't mean communications will be ineffective. You don't have to be a specialist. It's all about really doing the essentials. So one of the essentials would be to look at your project and say, what have we done so far? How are we telling people about our project? Who are the key people who really matter, the key people who can influence our project to make it successful, and the key people who are going to be impacted by what we do. So, you know, the end users. And, you know, what do they need to know? What do they already know? How do they feel? What do we want them to do? You know, at the moment, what is the likelihood they're going to do what we ask? You know, so if we ask them to work differently, will they? And then, you know, what are the objectives? Why are we putting money into communicating this project? Somebody thinks it's important enough to spend money and to spend time. Why? What do they expect us to achieve for the project? And then what are the key messages that we want to tell people? You know, if people only remember one thing from any piece of communication activity, what is that one thing that we want them to remember? And then we're going to make sure our communication activities are focused on that one thing.
Okay.
Yeah?
So, for example, what one thing can you really think about?
Okay. Let me see if I can give, I'm going to do this from my head to see how good my memory is. One of the projects I worked on was for Transport for London and for London councils. And it was a complex. It lasted 5 years. And
Wow.
started off in London, and then it went to the whole of the UK, and then it went across Europe. So it just kept getting bigger. And we had different audiences. And I'll talk about just one of the audiences, and they were parking managers in the UK. So they worked for local councils, and they were responsible for making sure that when people parked, they did so legally. So they only parked where it was legal to do so, and if there was a fee, they paid it. And what we wanted them to understand was why they should get involved in our project. So what was the benefit for them? And our project was all about changing the law so that, you know, people did park legally. So what did we need to do, and why should they get involved? And we would explain that, you know, very clear objectives about what was in it for them.
Wow, that really looks interesting, because it all boils down to this effective communication that you really think about. And for a project that lasted 5 years means that there was a lot of communication in there.
Yes, there was. There was a lot of communication. It was predominantly communication because we were the aim of the project was to change the attitudes of politicians and of senior people working in the parking industry.
What happens if there's lack of communication in project management?
My experience is that projects fail. They don't deliver what they're expected to deliver. But even more than that, I've worked in lots of projects, and one of the outcomes that I see is that project managers lose their jobs. So because they don't deliver, they haven't got anything tangible to put on their CV. But also, if they don't deliver what the leaders expect, then they lose their job and they lose their role in the company, and they have to find another job.
Wow.
So it's pretty serious, and I see that happening again and again and again. But I have to say, what I also see is that project managers, when they realise their project is not going to deliver, they leave before
the time, before the bombshell. So it means that for somebody to entrust any project management in your care, you need to deliver.
Yes, absolutely.
Is it only communication that you're going to recommend for the person, effective communication, that you're going to recommend the person that is being entrusted with any project management, or there are other things that you advise?
The technology has to work as well. So, you know, I gave the example of the CRM project and the purchase order system, and I've been involved in other technology rollouts as well. And it's all, you know, if you roll out the technology and it doesn't work, it doesn't matter how great I am at communicating, it's still going to fail. You know, whatever I was involved in a project in which the technology was no good. This was a technology a project to upskill people. So it was at a time in British Telecom, and it was working with their very senior salespeople. And this is a good 15 years ago. And in comparison to companies like IBM, they weren't as good at selling. They didn't have the skills. And so BT was not doing as well selling very complex solutions to very big companies. And so they'd set up this project to identify a system. It was an online system for assessing people's skill levels and assessing what they needed to do to get better at their jobs. They spent 18 months developing the technology, and when they went to roll it out, it took too long to do. People had to go online and answer a series of questions and get an assessment. It took 2 hours to do the online assessment, and then the report that they got was very generic and wasn't helpful. And so the salespeople were saying, you know, we're not doing this. This is we can't do this. Partly because the salespeople were only allowed to spend 2 weeks a year doing anything that wasn't selling. And so all their training, everything that they did was only allowed to take 2 weeks a year. 2 hours is actually a large chunk of time out of 2 weeks.
Wow.
So I was brought in at that time. They changed the technology, and I got involved in communicating, but the technology was never that great. And what eventually happened is, the project manager moved on and someone else took over. But also, the team was disbanded.
Wow.
So so all those salespeople, the whole organisation was moved from one part of British Telecom to another part, and lots of people lost their jobs.
So does it make it scary from what you are saying, that if there's any project management, doesn't are people scared to take out the mantle to say, yes, I'm going for it and I'm going to make sure it works?
It doesn't. No, unfortunately, you think that they would. That's not my experience. My experience is the majority of people in their jobs, they've got their heads down and they're doing what they've been told to do day in, day out. So they're doing stuff. They're doing what I call outputs. They're not looking up to see why they're doing this job. So what are the outcomes that we're supposed to deliver? So if we were talking public relations, they would be producing lots of press releases without thinking about why the company doesn't want lots of press releases. What they want is the key audiences and the media to give them positive coverage.
Yeah.
And they forget that. So many people in their jobs have got their heads down, just mechanically doing whatever they've been asked to do, and they don't, when they look at projects, all they think is, oh, it's going to stop me doing my day, what I'm supposed to do. They don't realise that if they don't change, they'll lose their job will be changed.
So does it mean that you're talking about people, as in terms of their roles, they keep their head down and make sure they deliver, but they don't take any initiative to make things work outside their roles, right?
Yes, and often they deliver the wrong thing.
So it's more about, is it from the top to the bottom, there's not much communication?
Yes, yeah, that happens a lot. But it's more than that, though. And again, I've seen this. I've been working for a good 30 years. And, the people who we all started at the bottom in the most junior management roles. And we all, together, we all moved up and we got promoted and we got more and more and more senior. And when you do that, your focus changes. As a senior leader, you have to be focused on strategy. You have to be looking at shareholders. You have to be looking at what the city wants. The focus is completely different to what's required when you're at the bottom serving customers. And they just forget. They forget what it's like. They haven't been there for so long. I mean, if I was put into a very junior communications role, I would probably struggle.
Yeah.
Because I haven't done it for so long. But the people at the bottom don't understand either. So there's this huge gulf in understanding. Both sides don't understand each other. So the people at the bottom are normally very passionate about their jobs. That's my experience. They're very passionate. They're very passionate about caring for their customers. And that's what they want. They expect senior people to understand and value their passion. And of course, the senior people, even if they do, they don't explain that they do. They don't communicate their care. And so we get frustration on both sides.
Is there an element of a master-servant relationship between those at the top and those at the bottom affecting communication?
Okay. I have to say I love that question because I love the concept of a servant leader. So have you heard of that concept? So there are lots of different leadership models. One of the leadership that I'm actually turning your question on its head.
So I was a bit confused.
One of the concepts of leaders says that leaders are there to serve.
But does it really work?
Not to be masters.
Yes.
There are leaders around who believe passionately in it and who do an amazing job. So one of my favourite companies is a company called Tom's Shoes. It's an American company. They make affordable shoes, canvas shoes. The guy who started the company, he's got an unpronounceable, I'm not even going to try to pronounce surname. He took a gap year from university in America, or a gap period, and he went down to South America with friends, and he was appalled at the suffering he saw of the children. So, the children who didn't have shoes, they couldn't go to school, they had lots of bugs in their feet, and their health was affected. So he decided that he wanted to create a company whose purpose was to give shoes to children in Latin America. And he went back and created Tom's Shoes, maybe 8 years ago now. And for every pair of shoes he sells, he gives a pair away.
Wow.
Amazing. They've given away more than 1 million pairs of shoes.
Wow.
So they started off in America. You can now buy Tom's shoes in London. There's a store, I think it's on Oxford Street, it might be Regent Street, but a store in the centre of
Wow.
London. And yeah,
So you give the other pair to the underprivileged in society.
yes. So
Powerful.
and it's people fall over themselves to work for him. People want to work for him. And they take, if you're lucky enough to get onto their graduate program, part of the program is you go down to Latin America in a big group with a huge, I mean, absolutely massive boxes of shoes, and you fit them on the children. And every year they go back and they give the children a new pair of shoes because, of course, their feet grow.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is really interesting,
It's
and
an amazing,
it's
amazing
a very
company.
powerful model, you
Yeah.
know. And it's great that we have people like that in our world today. Not
Yes.
too many of them these days, though.
Yeah. Yeah.
What factors can lead to failure of any project management?
There are so many. Partly we've talked about definitely communication, definitely the technology not working.
Mm-hmm.
Another one I've seen is when halfway through the project, the focus of the company changes. So let me give you an example. One of my friends is working in a pharmaceutical company, so not AstraZeneca, but another company that is also being taken over, or a company is attempting to take them over. So all the projects that they've got going are being put on hold, just because they don't know what the future is
Wow.
going to be, and they're focused. They've got a new project focused on defending the company and trying to prevent it being taken over. And what they've got to do is persuade their shareholders that the current leadership of the company are going to be better at leading the company and delivering a dividend in the future than the venture capitalists trying to take them over.
Wow.
So everything's on hold, you know,
Yeah.
and things like that. No project team can you can't even know it's going to happen,
Exactly.
and you can't do anything about it. The other one is a crisis. I mean, that is an example of a crisis, but there are lots and lots of crises.
Mm-hmm.
So if we take Shell in the Niger Delta, you know, that's
Mhm.
forever having problems,
Yeah.
that you'd have to drop everything and deal with the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you cannot concentrate on your project, and the communication becomes non-effective,
Yes.
and it affects the whole company.
Yeah.
That is that is really true. You know, projects, people look at securing big budgets
Yes.
rather than the communication aspect.
Yeah.
Why is it always the case?
I would say partly, and this is talking about both in the UK and in America, the two training programs. So there's PMP in the UK and sorry, in America, and Prince 2 in the UK. And they're the training programs that anybody who wants to be a project manager has to go on. And yes, people from Africa come over to the West to do the courses, and I'm sure you can do them in Africa as well, and in Asia and in Australasia. They don't really include communications. They don't include stakeholder relationships. The communications that's in the training packages is all about communications within the project team. So keeping everybody up to date in team meetings. And that's a fraction of what communications is in a project. So loads of people who work in projects don't understand what communications and projects is. So the things that we've been talking about, they've never heard of. They've never heard that they should be building relationships with their stakeholders outside the team. That's one of the reasons, and it's probably a key reason, really. One of the key reasons is no one's ever said to them, this is what you should do. But also they don't think about communications until things go wrong, way down in the project. And you know, I have got clients who bring me in at the beginning of a project, right at the very early stage, and no matter what the size of the budget, I say give at least 10% to the project, and that's 10% of the money and at least 10% of your time. But I mean, I've said that to people, to project managers, and they've said, no, 80% of your time,
Wow.
which is, yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference.
it is, isn't it?
Yeah. Briefly, do you need to be an expert in communication before you can undertake a successful project management?
Not at all. Because when you do projects, you don't need to do the really flashy, whizzy communications. It doesn't have to be perfect. It has to be clear, and relevant for your audiences. And there is always going to be, never enough resources. So it's best to make it very simple, to make it very clear and very simple, and make it relevant. Definitely, you should plan. So definitely spend some time thinking about what your strategy is, and then coming up with a communications plan, a very clear, simple communications plan with clear roles and responsibilities for communication. And probably you need to put some measurement in there so that if people don't deliver, there's some form of stick, carrot and stick, some form of disadvantage that means that they do want to make the effort.
Okay. That is probably instituting more bonus structures and all that on the other side. Not always like, high and fire for projects as well.
Yes,
yeah.
But some form of appraisal that says, this is not working.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Your last word.
My last word. I think one of the things I haven't talked about is, where we're taking stakeholders. And I think one of the things that I found works really well when I talk to project teams, because a lot of the communications language that we use, the marketing language we use, is foreign to people, just like the word stakeholder relationships. I say we're taking our stakeholders on a journey from where they are to where we want them to be. So we have to know where they are, we have to know where we want them to be, and we have to know how to get them there, and then we have to do it.
Wow. Very powerful. Once again, thank you very much for honoring our invitation to come on the Next Level TV show.
Thank you, Oscar, for having me. It's been fabulous. I've really enjoyed it. It's been a scream, hasn't it?
I have really loved it. And trust me, you all have dreams and aspirations in life. You want to achieve a certain goal in life. Anne is here to tell you, you cannot make it without an effective communication.
Yeah.
Communication is the basics for your success in any project that you want to undertake. In our world today, there are so many forms of communication that you can really do to make it happen. But listen, this is from the expert's own mouth. She has told us effective communication is the tool. I have been blessed. I have learned a lot. To be honest, I'm learning every day from this talk show. I don't know about you. Don't keep this information to yourself. Every Sunday, 5 p.m., we are here to inspire you with different topics that will help you to achieve your dreams in life. So till next week, Sunday, 5 p.m. prompt on Zip TV, and we are here to inspire you. Have a blessed week and see you next week.